Mr. Clerk, are you ready?
I am.
Alrighty, so are we starting, Mr. Clerk, with the City of Tucson Public Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting? Yes, okay. Just wanted to make sure. And let's get started. So the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tucson Public Housing Authority will stand in session. Mr. Clerk, please go to roll call.
Roger's muted.
Nick Santa Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Cunningham.
Here.
Mr. Durham.
Absent excused.
Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Fimbres.
Here.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Here.
Mr. Mohammed.
Here.
Mayor Romero.
Here. Item 2.
Public Housing Authority approval of agency annual plan, housing choice voucher administrative plan, and public housing admissions and continued occupancy policy changes for fiscal year 2021, resolution number PHA 2020-010.
City Manager's communication number 427 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read resolution PHA 2020-010 by number and title only.
Resolution number PHA 2020-010 relating to public housing, approving the Public Housing Authority and the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tucson, Arizona are requested to approve changes associated with the agency annual plan, housing choice voucher administrative plan, and the public housing admissions and continued occupancy plans and declaring an emergency.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mayor, I'd move that we approve the agency plan PHA 2020-010.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Clerk, let's go to roll call.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Aye.
Nick Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mayor Romero.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres.
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed.
Aye.
Resolution PHA 2020-010 passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 3.
Public Housing Authority monthly board report on programs and financial operations.
City Manager's communication number 428 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Is there a motion to approve the monthly board report?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the monthly board report as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mayor Romero.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres.
Aye.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed.
Aye.
Nick Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Aye.
The motion to approve the monthly board report passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 4.
Public Housing Authority write-off of uncollectible accounts receivable, resolution number PHA 2020-012.
City Manager's communication number 429 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read resolution PHA 2020-012 by number and title only.
Resolution number PHA 2020-012 relating to Public Housing Authority, authorizing the write-off of certain uncollectible accounts and declaring an emergency.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mayor, I'd move that we approve the write-off of these uncollectible accounts PHA 2020-012.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Fimbres.
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Mayor Romero,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Resolution PHA 2020-012 passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 5,
Public Housing Authority approval of a consent development agreement with Posadas Sentinel LLP for Santa Rosa Recreational Center, resolution number PHA 2020-014.
City Manager's Communication Number 431, dated December 8th, is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read Resolution PHA 2020-014 by number and title only.
Resolution number PHA 2020-014 relating to Public Housing Authority, authorizing and approving the execution of the consent development agreement between the City of Tucson and Posadas Sentinel LLP for the Santa Rosa Recreational Center and declaring an emergency.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mayor, I motion to pass and adopt resolution PHA 2020-014.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any continued discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
Mayor Romero,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Resolution PHA 2020-014 passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 6,
Public Housing Authority approval of the physical needs assessment and energy audit contract, resolution number PHA 2020-013.
City Manager's Communication Number 430, dated December 8th, is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read Resolution PHA 2020-013 by number and title only.
Resolution number PHA 2020-013 related to Public Housing Authority authorizing the execution and approval of the physical needs assessment and energy audit for the public housing program and declaring an emergency.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mayor, I motion to pass and adopt resolution PHA 2020-013.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Alrighty, hearing none, roll call.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham, Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Mayor Romero.
Aye. Resolution PHA 2020-013 passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 7,
Approval of Public Housing Authority minutes.
City Manager's Communication Number 432, dated December 8th, is received into and made part of the record. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 4th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mayor Romero,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres.
Aye.
Motion to approve the minutes of the November 4th, 2020 meeting passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 8,
Adjournment.
the meeting of the Board of Commissioners is adjourned. The mayor and council will now convene our regular meeting. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ready, council will stand in session. Roll call.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
Here.
Mr. Cunningham,
I am present.
Mr. Durham,
Absent, excused.
Lee,
Here.
Mr. Fimbres,
Here.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Here.
I don't know if you called me, Mr. Clerk, but I'm here.
Mayor
Item
O'Meara?
2.
I was looking
Item
at you,
2,
sorry. Invocation and appointments to boards, committees, and commissions.
the invocation will be given by Ana Marufo, staff member for the city clerk's office.
Okay, let us pray. Deepen our love for our city and our desire to serve it. Strengthen our power of self-sacrifice for our city's welfare. Teach us to uphold its good name by our own right conduct. Cause us to see clearly that the well-being of our city is in the hands of all its citizens. Amen.
Item 2B,
Appointments to boards, committees, and commissions.
city manager's communication number 393 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. There are no appointments to be made at this time. Are there any personal appointments to be made at this time? Hearing none. Item 3,
Mayor and council report, summary of current events.
city manager's communication number 394 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow members of the mayor and council to report on current events. These are to be current events or activities within the community, not position statements on policy issues. Does any council member have anything to report at this time? Let's start from Ward 1 and then go down the line. So Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I just wanted to let the community know that on Saturday, December 12th, Supervisor Villegas from District 5 and the Pima County Natural Resources Parks and Recreation will be dedicating the Enchanted Hills Trails Park at 9 a.m. This will be taking place at Tucson Mountain Park, all the way at the end of 36th Street. We're asking folks that do decide to come out to wear masks and make sure to stay, physically distant when they enjoy the new trail hike. And then the last thing that I just wanted to share with with the community is that we're coming to the conclusion of our We Are One Somos Uno Immigrant Relief Fund. We had the opportunity to kind of talk to our, I wanted to thank the Sunnyside Foundation for all their work and working with our community partners to get these funds out to the families and the community members that needed it the most. Hearing their stories were really, like, it just makes you feel like this is why this fight is worth it and what we're here to do. And so I'm just really thankful that everybody kind of came together to get these funds out, and hopeful that we've kind of set up the infrastructure so that we can continue fundraising and helping the most vulnerable in our community. So thank you so much to the Sunnyside Foundation, the mayor's office, and all our CBOs that helped us out. Thank you.
And I just want to repeat that was $1.25 million that Council Member Santa Cruz and I just helped just a little be able to distribute here in the city of Tucson that otherwise would, it's funds that otherwise would not have come to Tucson for the Somos Uno Immigrant Relief Fund. So congratulations, Councilmember Santa Cruz, on your hard work and the partnerships built around this Immigrant Relief Fund. Really proud of you. Ward 2, Vice Mayor Cunningham.
First of all, I wanted to let all the kids who participated in youth sports over this fall, I wanted to congratulate them. And I know it's a rough time to be a teen. As a teacher, it's really starting, a lot of kids are over it, is the best way I can put it. And my advice to them and their parents is to hang in there, and we're gonna get through this. And the other thing I want to remind everybody is that we have multiple free testing sites throughout the county. We have multiple pop-up tents, pop-up testing sites throughout the county and the city, work that this council has been instrumental in. And if you feel you've been exposed or you feel a cold coming on or for whatever reason you want, I urge you to get tested as often as possible. There is a bit of there's now a 1 to 2 day lag. In other words, you can't get in right away. So you may want to be as proactive as you can and plan your visit ahead, or you can go to the walk-in test centers. But be tested, stay vigilant in being tested. And if you do test positive for COVID, make sure you stay home, isolate, and quarantine. Other than that, let's get through this next 90 to 100 days because if we can and we do it right, it's going to be a big party. So that's the best thing I can say.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple brief things from our office. I want to talk about Tucson Firefighter Association Chili Cook-Off. Due to COVID-19, TFFA wasn't able to hold their annual chili cook-off to raise funds for the Adoptive Family Program, giving hundreds of holiday meals and gifts to families in need. So instead this year, they have a drive-through chili cook-off that's coming December 11th at the TCC parking lot B, which is at 300 South Fire Central Place from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pretty awesome partnership. The chili was produced by El Charro Restaurants, pre-packaged and frozen for easy pickup. The cost is $10 with proceeds going to this year's Adopt a Family program. And please bring cash. You can also drop off non-perishable food items to be donated to families in need. Quantities are limited and chili will be available on a first come, first serve basis. And you know, with El Charro, it's going to be delicious. So first come, first serve basis. Last, wreaths across America. This holiday season, we are going to remember the fallen and honor those that served on December 19th at 10 a.m. by laying remembrance wreaths on grave sites at the East Lawn Palms, which is at 5801 East Grant Road. Special recognition for Marcia and Brian Moon, who lost their son who was in the Army. Chris Moon in 2010, he was killed in Afghanistan. So Marcia has a wreath goal for 2020 of 2,600 wreaths that she's trying to raise funds for. If you'd like to make donations, you can do so by going online to wreathsacross.org/AZELPC. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilmember Fimbres?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to welcome back my Chief of Staff who was on medical leave, and now he's healed up and he's doing well. Thank you all for your prayers for him. On Friday, November 20th, I, along with my Ward 5 staff and volunteers, went to Apollo Middle School in Ward 5 and delivered 20 food boxes to families in need. This was done thanks to the Tucson business owners, Dr. Ed Ackerley, coaches of charity, and Gap Ministries who put together the food boxes. I want to thank them for their leadership and helping us organize this thing. I am sad to report that on Thursday, December 3rd, Mr. Frank Yanis, Ward 5 constituent neighborhood activist and U.S. Army veteran, passed away. Mr. Yanis took part with me in the Tucson Veterans Parade several times, riding in the vehicle with me. I and my Ward 5 staff want to extend our condolences to the Yanis family for their loss. On Saturday, December 5th, the 12th annual Bike in a Box took place with the COVID-19 health pandemic ongoing. Certificates for fully assembled were given to children and their families. I want to congratulate Jesse Lugo and Lugo Charities for their success again and continued commitment to our community. For more information, going online to lugocharities.com. On Saturday, December 5th, also, the 520 Boys Club had held a Stuff the Fire Truck event at Office Depot to get toys for Christmas for the children attending the Pueblo Gardens Elementary School. Several members of the 520 Boys attended that school and wanted to give back to their school and community. I want to congratulate the 520 Boys on their successful event. Monday, December 7th, marked the 79th anniversary of the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor by the Imperial Japanese Navy. A total of 2,467 people were killed and 1,178 were wounded. The surprise attack sank the USS Arizona, killing 1,177 on board the ship. Many Tucsonans were stationed on the USS Arizona and at Pearl Harbor and lost their lives in the surprise attack by the Empire of Japan, including 3 Tucson High graduates: Lieutenant Lester Baker, 1933 graduate, PFC Robert Menzie, 1937 graduate, and APSM James Van Horn, was 17 at the time and is entombed in the USS Arizona. our nation marked the day with Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. We should never forget the greatest generation. I'm going to thank Congresswoman Ann Kirkpatrick and her staff for their work in obtaining 10,000 disaster blankets for the city of Tucson for people in need and for the homeless population. Staff had informed me that the Department of Defense would not be sending the city an allotment of 10,000 blankets. I worked with our federal lobbyist, Tracy Tucker at BTVF, to send a letter asking for assistance to get the blankets that were to go to Tucson. Congressman Kirkpatrick's office lobbied in Tucson well by getting the shipment of blankets to be coordinated by the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army updated delivery information with the DOD on December 7th. Emergency blankets are expected to arrive in approximately 2 weeks. In addition, 1,050 sleeping bags were purchased using the CFSA donation of $20,000 on Thursday, December 3rd. These sleeping bags arrived yesterday and 950 have already been distributed to street outreach shelter and congregate meal programs for community distribution. The remaining 100 are reserved for additional projects that are being picked them up this week. Lastly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of Armando Rios on the loss of Armando, who passed away suddenly. Armando was involved in many community projects, most recently the Center of Opportunity. He was working as the HSL Lopez Family Foundation, which works to better the lives of many in our community. His leadership will be missed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueres. Councilmember Kusacek?
I was just going to add on to what Richard just said about Armando, all of his great work with the Boys and Girls Clubs and special needs kids, downtown redevelopment, just an all-around good guy.
Yeah, I want to as well include my sincerest condolences to Rosemary Diaz, Armando's mom. Armando was an All-American high school athlete and was involved in sports. And besides all of his work as an athlete in the sports world with all the work that he did in the community, Boys and Girls Club, and most recently with the Center of Opportunity, Armando and I met in a very under concerning circumstances, but he picked up the phone one day and called me and said, council member at the time, I want to talk to you. And since then, for years now, we have had a great friendship, and he will be absolutely missed in the community. And I just want to once again give my sincerest condolences to Rosemary Diaz, his mom, Patrick, his son, and the rest of the Rios family for the loss of Armando. It was a huge surprise. I also wanted to include that I am an elector for the state of Arizona, and I have the honor to cast my vote next Monday, the 14th. I'm one of the 11 electoral votes here in the state of Arizona, and I'll be at the ceremony casting my vote on Monday, December 14th. So I don't know if we've had another mayor be an elector for the state of Arizona. So I'm very happy that I have that responsibility and honored to cast my vote next Monday. Item 4. City Manager's communication number 395 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow the City Manager to report on current events. Mr. Manager.
Mayor, thank you, and members of the council. I'm going to take the privilege of the microphone just for a minute, and I hope you bear with me. First thing I wanted to do was just let you all know that I need to recognize my wife, Pat. No, it's not her birthday, but this coming Sunday, we will have 40 years of marriage. He was very, very young when we got married.
She was.
Yeah, I wasn't. But I just wanted to give her a shout out to put up with me for 40 plus years now, is pretty amazing. We met in earth science in high school, and here we are. So, and I will also tell you, she's absolutely my hero, and I wouldn't be here if it weren't for her. So just want to make sure you're all clear on that. The other piece of information I want to share with you is, again, we'll call it bittersweet for our very own Albert Elias. Mr. Elias, this is his last council meeting. And he asked me not to make any comments. And since I'm such a rule follower, I'm going to break that, and we're going to honor him a little bit with a few comments and commentary, Mayor and members of the council. Albert has 36 years of service. His last day with the city of Tucson will be January 4th. Keep in mind that you have a meeting on January 5th. I have considered revoking his retirement and making him sit through one more council meeting, and his date could be January 6th, but he's told me it doesn't matter because he's walking out on January 4th. But I did want to walk you through his amazing career here at the city, because I think it's worthy of recognition. So he was hired on June 4th, 1984, and served as a principal planner until May of 1996. Then he became a transportation administrator. He served in that role until 1999. Then he became the deputy director of transportation, served in that role until 2002. Then for 1 year, he was director of special projects. And then for the next 6 years until 2009, he was the director of planning. Then for the next 3 years, he was the director of community services, which is now our housing and community services, until 2012, when he became the assistant city manager and has served in that role since. I can tell you that having worked very closely with him, not only did he make my transition to city manager very smooth, but there were a couple of words, there were actually several words that others and I have identified that I think encapsulate Mr. Elias. Number one, amazing individual, someone who has integrity second to none. I've seen him in many, many, I'll call difficult situations, and Albert is steady, strong, very compassionate, very even-tempered, almost to the point of frustrating me a little bit. But I can tell you he keeps his temperament so even-keeled and really demonstrates strong leadership all the time, and above it, just amazing. I can tell you that he actually worked here a little longer than 36 years because he would come in and work as a parks employee, pruning trees and then picking up around the parks. I suspect he probably did that to get out of working at his dad's print shop, but we can't confirm that for sure, but we do have a suspicion that he did that. He also represented Tucson across North America through the Rose Fellowship. He actually went to various communities and assisted them in some of the fundamental pieces of the Rose Fellowship. Talking about community development, was a resident expert in that. He's also mentored many staff throughout his years. And I can tell you that the approach he takes is one of not only compassion, but thoughtful listening, thoughtful leadership, and guidance. And I think that his staff will attest to that. So I would just tell you that not only do I consider him a valuable colleague and someone who has made things great for us here in the city manager's office, but I consider Albert a friend, and I wish he and Sarah and his entire family and his new grandbaby the best in their new endeavors and their future endeavors. And I know that his love for Tucson, Arizona, his commitment to Tucson, Arizona is second to none. So I'd like to give some time to Mr. Rankin. Did you want to say anything on that? So I wanted to turn it over to Mike.
And I will honor Albert's wishes and be brief, but I've only worked for the city for 28 years. So by comparison, still a newcomer to the city organization. And I can tell you that in my 28 years working, particularly in the last 18 or so, where I've worked closely with Albert, I don't think I've met a single person that I admire more. And I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Mayor, that concludes my my commentary, my comments. Thank you for your patience as I went through that.
Madam Mayor, I would like to also say Albert's leadership has been paramount in our system, working with a lot of folks, especially in these challenging times this year. When I walked into the council office in 09, we were going through the worst recession since the Great Depression. And Albert had a lot of great ideas to pinch the pennies that we needed to pinch and continue the programs that were so needed, so valuable. He also had a strong historical knowledge of our organization, extraordinary dedication to our community, and the history of our city of Tucson. I know the Elias family is 5 generations or 6 generations. I know they're very historical here and they played a powerful part. And Albert's leadership, dedication, and commitment to our community will be missed. So thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Fimbres, and thank you, Mr. City Manager and Mike Rankin. I too want to add my profound gratitude for the 36 years plus of service that Mr. Albert Elias gave as a servant to our community. I've known him for at least 15 years, 15, 16 years before I actually became a council member for the city of Tucson. Through his family, through Mr. Elias and my dear friend Richard. I met the entire family, Elias family and all of your family, Albert. And I just want to say how proud you made your dad and your mom and your entire family for how smart you are. I remember Richard, I always would say, Albert is the smart one. So I appreciate all of your work that you've given the city of Tucson in so many different roles. And I am grateful for your dedication to the citizens of Tucson.
Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Albert under my report, if you're okay with that.
That's what I was going to ask him, but I didn't want to put him on the spot, see if he wanted to
That's okay. He told me not
include
to
something.
on the spot. He's fine. Go ahead, Albert.
Thank you, Mayor Romero, Councilmember Fimbres, all the members of the council, and Mr. Manager as well. You know, it's been a privilege to be able to work with you, and I want to thank you for all your support. I've also enjoyed the opportunity to work with great colleagues, and especially the members of our community, working together to serve our community and make it the best place we can. You know, it's been wonderful to be able to be part of Mr. Ortega's team and the way that he has created a work environment with open and honest communication and the ability to work in innovative ways to serve our community. So that's been a real great opportunity just in the recent years. But thank you all for your support. Thank you for all the opportunity to collaborate. And I really also want to acknowledge my wife and family for all of the times they've put up with me. You know, this is challenging work sometimes. And frankly, it can't be done without having a whole team of individuals behind you. So I recognize that whatever contributions I've made have only been as part of a larger effort to make Tucson the best place it can possibly be. So thanks again for the unique privilege to be able to serve our community. I will forever be committed to making Tucson the best that it can possibly be. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm probably gonna live the rest of my life and die here in Tucson, and I would want it no other way. Thank you again for all the opportunity and and the support and great work we've done over the years. We have much to celebrate and much to be thankful for. So have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely, Albert. Thank you so much. Item 5.
Liquor license applications, report from city manager.
City Manager's communication number 396 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, please read the liquor license agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's liquor license agenda under item 5B, we have 4 requests for new license. Staff has indicated that the applicants are in compliance with city requirements with the exception of 5B1. Planning and Development Services has indicated that the applicant is not in compliance with city requirements, so that item will be considered separately. An appropriate motion would be to forward items 5B 2 through 4 to the State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Clerk?
Your Honor, the item to be considered separately is item 5B1. It's Make Music Foundation located in Ward 6.
Mr. Kozachik, did you want to lead on this one?
Sure. The information I received from Planning and Development Services this morning was that the foundation had not yet achieved agreement with the property owners. And so we should delay this until they have achieved that. So Mr. Rankin, do we have or what's the procedurally, how do we just delay consideration so we don't send a recommendation to the State Liquor Board at this point?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Kozachik, I'm wondering if a representative for the application is present. Typically what we do here is that we go on the record to make sure that the applicant's in agreement to extend the time for our review, because in the alternative, we're really in a position of having to make a decision now before our time for making a recommendation to the board has expired.
And when does that meter run out, Roger, do you know?
Actually, the meter's actually expired. We've already requested an extension from the state through today.
Is someone from the Make Music Foundation on the call with us tonight?
I don't show anyone, sir.
And I have had no outreach from them at all. Then would an appropriate recommendation then, Mike, be that we submit with no recommendation to the State Liquor Board?
Councilmember Kozachik, that's certainly, I think, appropriate. And I think you could make it clear as part of the motion that in the event that the applicant clears up the control issue, the ownership or the use issue with the owner of the property, that we'd be authorized to notify the board that we are withdrawing the no recommendation and offering a recommendation for approval.
Okay, assuming it passes all the other scrutiny that we give. And so I would make that motion. And no recommendation with that caveat.
I'll second it.
So there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Clerk, do we need a roll call or voice vote?
Voice vote's fine, Your Honor.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Kozachik. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
That's the extent of the liquor license, Your Honor.
Thank you. Item 6.
Call to the audience.
At this time, the public is allowed to address the mayor and council on any issue except for the items scheduled for a public hearing at this meeting. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations, and call to the audience is scheduled to last for no more than 30 minutes. Pursuant to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, individual council members may ask the city manager to review the matter, ask the matter be placed on a future agenda, or respond to criticism made by speakers. However, the mayor and council may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during call to the audience. So we're going to start call to the audience, but I want to make sure that we have a long list. Those of you that hear what you had to say Don't have to repeat your remarks, but I'm going to try and fit in as many people as I possibly can in this half an hour that we have. So with that, I'd like to start with Wendy Burkhardt.
Yes, I'm here.
Alrighty, go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm Wendy Burkhardt, I'm a resident of Tucson, and I'm discussing the property value decreases caused by cell tower installations near homes. It's well established that residential properties abutting overhead power lines end up selling for less, 20 to 30% less than market value. Established research over the last 20 years points to the exact same thing for residential properties located next to cell towers. And why is that? Residential properties next to overhead electrical power lines emit magnetic fields of radiation known to cause significantly higher occurrences of childhood leukemia and other illnesses. The same holds true for properties next to cell towers. The electromagnetic power and frequencies are spewing from the towers 24/7, all day and night, year after year. This also causes significantly higher occurrences of things such as headaches, confusion, cardiac issues, fatigue, stroke, cancer, infertility, and the list goes on, not to mention the environment around the tower, including, things like trees and bees and nature, right? Running cell towers at more than the minimum amount of power needed for telecommunication services violates US 47 Code Section 324, use of minimum power. Such violations occur daily in Arizona wherever there is an insufficiently regulated tower in operation in the public rights of way near homes, because no federal, state, or local government is effectively policing the maximum power output from so-called small wireless telecommunication facilities. In other words, the small cells. The Tucson City Council could fix this by passing a local ordinance to require a simple city-controlled fuse on every small cell, small wireless telecommunication facility. Such a local ordinance would bring this into compliance with our federal statute. In addition, such a local ordinance could also earn the city big money by levying policing fees on telecom firms that blow any of the city-controlled fuses, which I think is actually kind of a brilliant idea. It's not my idea, but it's a brilliant idea. We call this 3 strikes and you're out program. Now, I'd like to just briefly go over a couple of things, a couple short stories. Children in a 2-story home in California next to a small cell right outside their home became seriously ill from 50,000 average radiation units in their bedroom. Parents spent over $10,000 on shielding, protection, and now are in the parties are in a lawsuit. And by the way, this not considering the health and public safety has resulted in lawsuits across the country, and these lawsuits can come down to bankrupting not the city, but the city council members and or city coffers. One resident pleaded with the city of San Francisco to turn off the small WTF, which is the telecommunications wireless facility located 12 feet from her bedroom. 3 months later, she received a brain tumor diagnosis and had a mass removed from the inside of her brain. One electromagnetic sensitive woman was forced to vacate her home because she could no longer live there, and her family ended up selling the home for 23% less than the market value. So research shows that 94% of home buyers and renters are less interested in properties near cell towers and pay less for a property in close vicinity to cellular antennas. Even if we conservatively estimate only a 10% loss to Tucson's 2019 property tax revenue of approximately $48 million, this would represent a potential loss of $4.8 million to the city per year. So I've expressed no matter of mere concern, but solely matters of substance, in fact, in this. So I could go on, but I think I'm probably near my time. Thank you. And as you can hear, I'm a mother.
Thank you, Ms. Burkhardt. Appreciate your time. Raul Ramirez.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to address you. I'd like to talk about the redistricting plan. And I have a written statement. Since redistricting only comes up every 4 or 2 years following the census, it's easy to lose track of it. While I understand that a public hearing took place I wonder how it was publicized. I don't have a problem with the concept of equal representation and not diluting the minority vote. I reviewed the documents the city provided to Mayor and Council with the recommendation from the District Advisory Committee. And I find that option B which would move precinct 98 from Ward 3 to Ward 6 is the one that I think is the best option. It complies with the charter guidelines. Option A is more complicated as it moves precincts. And I'm very concerned about this plan because it includes precinct 37, which encompasses Sovaco and Jollyville and includes the El Rio Golf Course, the Joaquin Murrieta Park, and the El Rio Center. As you are aware, the golf course is a symbolic icon and represents the activism that took place, and it's a historical. It's part of the historical identity for the Chicano movement here in Tucson, going back to 1970. Frankly, I'm puzzled as to why this decision was made. Currently, Ward 3 has a majority population of 55%. In my estimation, it could now become represented by a person of color, especially now that we're not sure of the status of Councilperson Durham. The other thing is that since the 1920 census should be completed in a couple of years at the latest, at that time, the mayor and council could review redistricting. I believe that due to gentrification and growth, the demographics around the downtown area have changed, and they will dramatically impact wards 1 and 5. And thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Alonso Morado.
Thank you, Mayor Romero. And I also want to speak about redistricting. Back in 1990, I was a member of Mayor Tom Bolge's staff, and I was able to, I was assigned to staff the redistricting committee with the citizens and stuff. And then I was appointed in the year 2000 to be on the redistricting committee. And at that time, we were looking at the wards and stuff, and we were also looking at the population and what was going on in Tucson. People of color was growing very fast and stuff. And we wanted to make sure back then, that's 20, 30 years ago, to make sure that we were represented not by only two wards, but by a third one, and possibly even have influence in a fourth one by this time. As you know the numbers very well, members of the council. 54.5% of the residents of the city of South Tucson are people of color. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure to talk to you about today was that it is extremely important for us to make sure that the wards keep moving forward and stuff. Like Raul Ramirez said, that Ward 3 is already a minority district, and I think it also should be on the west side of the freeway. That way it has a better influence with our community, and we could have better representation. This year we saw a lot of disenfranchisement, and it seems to have become very like it was accepted. We saw long lines, we saw polls being taken away from minority areas. We saw less people, more people voting, but less places to go vote. And but one of the things that is the worst disenfranchisement that I see, and I've been studying this for so long, is that when we're packing people into 2 wards, especially in the city of Tucson, we've had those 2 wards that represent people of color for so many decades already, that we need to really start moving in a direction so that we can have better representation, and that we're represented on the city level at the numbers that we have. I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I hope that you take the whole thing into account. It's important, and and we deserve that representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morado. Pernella Jones.
Hello. Hello.
Go ahead, Pernella.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Me llamo Pernella Jones y he sido residente del barrio Hollywood por 40 años. 40 years is a long time. I will be as brief as I can, as several more eloquent people have already written to you, as well as will speak this evening. I'm speaking against your proposal on item number 12, in which you intend to move precinct number 37 out of Ward 1, which includes El Rio Acres and Silvercroft, also known as Sobaco and Jollyville. These neighborhoods have deep historic cultural ties to Hollywood and other West Side vecindades. It is difficult to not view moving them to a new ward as anything but a desire to split up those historic and cultural ties. Whether you intended to or not, whether you were paying attention to it or not, your option A would take out of Ward 1 El Rio Neighborhood Center, Joaquin Murrieta Park, and the Trini Alvarez El Rio Golf Course, which many of us fought so hard to preserve 7 years ago. Some of our allies, in fact, are concerned that there may be an attempt to mess with the golf course again, and that's why there may be a desire to move this precinct, or they consider it a form of punishment for us having the nerve to fight City Hall, as they say. But it is crucial that you all be apparent with your actions. For example, it is not clear to me why there's such an urgency to redistrict by the end of the year, when you will need to turn around and do it again with the 2020 census data. The only conceivable reason seems to be to have an impact on the 2021 city council election. However, you will need to turn around right away and do it when you do get the census. And like they say, you can fight City Hall. Option A would move 12,000 people from one precinct, from one ward to another, and option B would move only 5,000 people. While some people are promoting option B, I'm at least just saying that we should not accept option A. As Mayor Romero stated in the last study session on November 17th, this item was being itemized for discussion purposes only that night, and no formal action really should have been taken, but at least it gave us an opportunity to speak tonight. She cited the importance of engaging the community, soliciting feedback, and that you have until the end of the year to make a final decision. And I do appreciate that we are being able to provide our voices. And while I thank the advisory committee for their involvement, as I know that's a difficult thing to do, community participation should not end there. In an October 2nd memo to the Redistricting Committee, Jennifer Stash, Principal Assistant City Attorney, states, when considering a redistricting plan, keep in mind what the reason and the justification for making the change is. It is also important to follow objective guidelines for adopting the change, and that the jurisdiction afforded members of minority groups an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process. Finally, the jurisdiction should consider and take into account the concerns presented by the minority groups when making its redistricting decisions. I hope that you take those words to heart and vote against option A tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Linda McNulty. Mr. Clerk, is Linda McNulty with us?
I don't see her, Your Honor.
Okay. James Ticknor?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, James.
Excellent. So before I get into what I intended to talk about, I just wanted to have a point of courtesy. I would respectfully ask the city officials and councils whenever the constituents are speaking to you. I know we're in Zoom, we're at home, we're working through lunch, but please give them your undivided attention and courtesy, not turning off the camera, eating, getting up out of the chair, and I appreciate your consideration in that. But with that being said, I have a two-parter today. The very first part that I would like to address, and I will share my screen here, is an independent audit I conducted of the BCC's, or Boards and Commissions, compliance with open meeting laws. And I'll get in, I'm largely going to read from the script, but on the right-hand side, the visual aid there, the orange is representing the percentage of BCCs who are not in full compliance with the OML, and the blue represents those who are. So the findings that I had was that the percentage of BCCs who were in full compliance were 36%, and those who are not were 64%, totaling 155 known errors with an average of 4 discrepancies per BCC found to be in violation. The rate of violation, the total absence or lack of filings from some groups, such as the MHC, the OLCC, and others, indicate that the non-compliance rate is likely to be higher, as well as the average violations. The total number of non-compliant legal action reviews was 37, which, if challenged under the Arizona Revised Statutes 431.05, would be considered null and void, as they violate certain provisions in 431.01. However, the greater concern that I have is the average rate of violation per BCC, and that some of them don't have anything publicly available on the city's website to view as far as their agenda and meeting minutes, and I simply don't know why. And it suggests that the problem may be more extensive than I was able to examine in the data for my assessment. And I also would note, and if you'd like, I can send this to you, I have tabbed complete with dates and the issue identification, each of the violations for all of the 50-something meetings that there are, as well as on this side, excuse me, the group, as well as the number of errors and the LAR violations that they have. Okay, so I'm a political science graduate. Don't know if I mentioned that. I love politics, but I would say this brings me to the second part. This was brought about because I want to leverage my expertise and hard work to get on one of these boards and commissions. And I've talked with the all of my my ward representative. I've tried to talk to the mayor's office, the city clerks, and I don't get a clear answer. I don't know how to apply. They say to submit a paper application, or that it just needs to be put on the agenda by one of the city officials, and I just want to help. Thank you, and I'll stop screen share now.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, James. Miguel Ortega.
Miguel, before you speak, Mr. Manager, can you forward me Mr. Tickner's?
Can you hear me?
Hold on. Go ahead. Well,
can you forward me, Mr. Manager? Can you forward me, or Clerk, Mr. Clerk? Can you forward me Mr. Tickner's contact info so I can reach out to him?
So hard to get the. We can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Miguel Ortega. I live in the Ironwood Ridge neighborhood, which is walking distance from Joaquin Murrieta Park, which is the El Rio area in question, with the redistricting proposal that you will be considering today, which is option A. We oppose option A. My family opposes option A because it would divide our community. The barrios on the west side have been united and have worked together. Hello? Is somebody? Have been united for many years, and we have fought things like the attempted land grab of El Rio neighborhood open space. A little bit more about my background with my family. My wife is a fourth generation Arizonan. Her parents and family are from Barrio Hollywood. And we have been very involved in the community. We've worked with the Rio Coalition too, again, and successfully stopping the attempt of grabbing the land grab of El Rio. I've also been on the MC for the Fiesta Grande festival in Barrio Hollywood for 14 years, and been involved in also working to save our schools during that time when a lot of our schools were closing on the west side. Again, so I'd like to really stress the reason why we oppose option A and actually support option B. Option A, again, would take away power of constituents. We have traditionally worked together. That's, Sulaco, Jollyville, Hollywood, and all those areas we've traditionally worked together to advocate for resources like Joaquin Murrieta Park, for the open spaces in Rio, and to have to answer to two different council members, council member in Ward 6 and also Ward 1 would diminish our power. It would dilute the power of residents in this area, and that is just not acceptable. A little bit of what to get a sense of how much support there is in opposing option A and keeping our barrios united. In my time of organizing and working in the community, I have not seen this level of unity in opposition to this proposal. We walked precinct 37, and everyone we talked to was either opposed to this or had no idea about it. We also have close to 4 signatures opposing this option. And very significant, Councilmember Paul Durham in Ward 3 has publicly stated his opposition to option A and his support for option B. And I think that's very, very important. Also very concerned about the appointment of Ward 1 by someone who's only lived in our city for 3 years. That is unacceptable. We have many people who are seasoned and with a lot of experience in our community who could have better represented the needs of Ward 1. Yet the council member in Ward 1 appointed somebody who has only lived here for 3 years, and that just shows how callous this attempt to divide us is. And so again, I urge the mayor and council to please vote against A and please support option B. It does not divide the Barrios Centro there. We have seen it, we've studied it, and it's the best option to move forward tonight, option B. Thank you so much for your time. Again, please vote no on option A and yes to option B. Thank you for your time.
Alrighty, Elizabeth Soltero.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Liz Soltero, and I'm a longtime resident of Ward 1. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to share my comments perspective on what's unfolding surrounding the redistricting. There's a lot of misinformation being circulated regarding the intent and possible future impacts to our West Side barrios. The misinformation circulating seems to stem from personal vendettas and is clearly rooted in misogyny, choosing to target our 2 Chicana leaders on the council. And this is not the first time. The attacks have been directly targeted at Mayor Romero and Councilmember Santa Cruz. There are a lot of strong emotions around the redistricting proposal, and this is understandable. The city's decisions and policies have historically worked against the interests and benefits of our West Side neighborhoods and the Chicanx community, but the personal attacks, threats, and misinformation are damaging and divisive to our communities and the governing process of this council. I recognize the batallas that have been fought here on the West Side. Those histories continue to keep us grounded as we move forward and create new strategies to ensure our voices are heard. The coalition building and fight for West Side neighborhoods that folks did in the past was powerful, but this is not the same time or the same fight. There are many strategies that we can work on when it comes to how we advocate for our community and build collective power. As you know, we're a growing city, 46% Chicanx with vibrant, long-time roots in Tucson. We deserve more representation for our barrios, for all of the West Side, and for the future well-being of our families. We deserve to have more than one council member who centers equity for our community, who understands the impact the freeways and other economic development has had on our neighborhoods. I'm no expert on redistricting, but I do know that if we approach redistricting from a vision for our families' futures rather than a way to relive the battles of the past, maybe the conversation wouldn't slip into Trump-style politics and personal attacks and threats. To date, Mayor Romero and Councilmember Santa Cruz have led significant efforts that have benefited our community. They put forth a strategic plan for the CARES Act funding that lays out an equitable framework to help working families, small business owners, artists, testing. Your efforts brought 1.2 million to provide relief funds to our immigrant community, working alongside community organizations and organizers. These are not the actions of leaders who perpetuate the settler colonialism and historic trends of our local government. These are the actions of elected leaders who put their community's best interests at the forefront of every decision. We elected you, Mayor and Councilmember Santa Cruz, to work alongside us through the making of many tough collective decisions. We elected you to work strategically in our best interests. Tlasto Kamati, thank you for all you do to support our community.
Thank you, Ms. Soltero. Catherine Nichols.
Good evening, City Council people, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the community. I just wanted to raise, as somebody who has been living in Arizona for too long, that I am a big fan of redistricting on a regular basis. I recognize that it is important for us to have districts that respect and reflect our new representation. And while no option is going to be perfect, and people often are unhappy about moving, I still see myself as a citizen of District 13, but that district is long gone. I've been in LD9 for 10 years, and I had to get used to it. These things happen, and we do this so that we can have more accurate representation, because in the end, the founding beliefs of our country is that people's votes should matter, and that if you pack one district with a group of people, it doesn't give those people the same level of equity with their votes. I think maybe option A and option B aren't even enough of a step forward. I think perhaps there should be a recommendation to go back to the advisory council and consider really looking at a deep investigation on redistricting. There are some great experts in our state on redistricting, and I think that this issue deserves more than just a battle on Facebook. It deserves some serious introspection, and I look forward to the fact that we have great people on that council who might take this input and come back with other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Leanne Campos. Mr. Clerk, do we have Leanne Campos?
I show her.
I do see her. Leanne?
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
There you go. Go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to pop into your meeting real quick to discuss the expansion of the zoo. Just wanted to bring it to your attention that a lot of the people that I've spoken with didn't realize that the zoo was going to be expanding over the South Pond until the fence went up a couple of weeks ago. In that period of time, there have been about 16,000 signatures to a change.org petition opposing expanding over the South Pond. Most of the people I know are opposed to it because there's just a shortage of watered areas. I hesitate to call it waterfront, but in Tucson, the trees that are there that are really mature and old, Barnum Hill is there and kind of honors the man who made Reed Park possible. And it just seems like there are other options for the zoo to expand into that won't take that area. It's a unique place in Midtown, and we just don't want to see it go so that the zoo can expand. I've spoken with Tim over at Parks and Rec. He tells me that the golf course isn't an option because it's on a flood basin. It also looks like the South Pond is adjacent to a flood basin, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense as far as reasoning goes. I'm just hoping that you guys could reconsider if it's possible taking the South Pond. I don't think that the planning realized the community's attachment to that area until the fence went up around it a couple of weeks ago to do soil testing. I realize that it's been in the works for quite some time. I understand that the meetings that were attended to plan it were attended by 67 individuals and corporate representatives. So I don't know how well attended that is. And since the fence went up, like I said, there have been thousands of signatures opposing it. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of your time. I just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention and hope that if something can be done, you guys will work with the citizens of Tucson to halt the process.
Ms. Campos, can we share your email address with Mr. Tim Tamir, our interim Parks and Recreation Director, so that he can have a more detailed conversation with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I spoke with Tim earlier this week, and he was very pleasant and very helpful. And, you know, I appreciated him taking the time, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to, you know, at least reconsider and, you know, maybe think of an alternative of expansion. You know, just because that area is so unique. It's not like going to the zoo. Going to the zoo requires planning for families, coordination, days off for parents. In light of COVID, you know, it's just not as feasible as taking a casual trip to the park and letting your kids go and play and look at the ducks and the turtles. You know, and it's really surprising that the zoo's still going forward with the expansion, considering how hard hit they were by COVID and the fact that they were reaching out to the public for donations recently to help offset the impact that COVID's had. One would think that they could use the money that they were going to use to expand, maybe put that on hold, reconsider, and, you know, maintain the zoo that way.
Thank you, Ms. Campos. We appreciate your input, and we take what you have to say very seriously. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Romero.
All righty. Scott Egan.
Good evening. Hello, can you hear me? Anybody hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
hi, thank you very much. In just a few days, over 350 people have signed an open online petition entitled Stop the City of Tucson Redistricting Scam. And this is in opposition to option A as is being proposed. The petition addresses you, Mayor and Council. It has been sent to the City Clerk's office for your review. We are demanding that you reject the redistricting in option A, which will affect over 12,000 residents, when there is a perfectly good option B, which would affect under 5,000 residents, cause less disruption, and fulfill all legal requirements. These constituents of yours agree with our contention that option A is an attempt by the city to divide the West Side by removing a key neighborhood, El Rio Acres or Barrio Sulaco, from Ward 1 and placing it in Ward 3, which currently has no council representation. Tucson's West Side has a history of unity and struggle against city plans, like the privatization of our public parks. And this is an attempt to dilute the strength of our neighborhoods. Your stated plan to notify the residents only after they've been moved is both insulting and unjust. El Barrio Neighborhood Association, which I'm a board member of, as well as the El Rio Coalition, which I'm a member of, as well as many other members of other coalitions and neighborhoods, oppose this move made during a pandemic crisis that limits our community organizing abilities and group action. Yet in a few days, we have hundreds of voters calling on you to reject option A, redistricting. We hope you hear our demands and vote accordingly. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Kim Dominguez. Kim Dominguez.
Don't see her, Your Honor.
Okay.
If I may interject just briefly.
No, I'm so sorry. You cannot.
Okay.
We have to continue with call to the audience, and you had your turn. Ms. Charlene Mendoza.
Hello.
Yes, Ms. Mendoza, we can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Romero and the members of the Tucson City Council. My name is Charlene Mendoza. I have the honor of serving on the RAC. Tonight, however, I'm feeling called to express my own opinion. Recommendations offered to the mayor and council are credible, as was the process. Today, however, speaking for myself, change can be scary. Many of us have fought for every right, privilege, and bit of representation, voice, and political power we have. Now it's necessary to imagine more for ourselves, our children, and our community. Political boundaries will change. We all know that. Each time there is a census, communities that are on the borders between wards, districts, precincts, etc., are likely to change. I've been represented by Ann Kirkpatrick. I've also been represented by Raul Grijalva. I don't fear change. I know that we as individuals and as a community can build across geography and difference. To claim otherwise is disrespectful to each of us and to the work of our communities and ancestors. For myself, the precincts recommended for change were not identified for any nefarious purpose, but because those precincts met the criteria required and helped us move our city towards more equitable representation. The city charter and RAC rules make it clear that constraints on making changes are many, including maintaining ethnic balance while not diluting the Hispanic vote. Option A was a decent move in that direction. It moves the Latinx population in Ward 3 to 43%, which does more accurately reflect the demographics of our city. Because there are not clear and quantifiable definitions of exactly what that means or exactly where we should aim, it is somewhat open to interpretation. Redistricting is not work that should be taken lightly, yet as we see in our city and in our country, the need for representation that is real and reflective of our populations and communities is needful. There are many ways to work together and to build power. As the mayor and council are able to act on recommendations or not, I encourage the council to move forward with boldness, to select a solution that creates wards that are as equal as possible in number, while reflective of the demographics of our beautiful city. Finally, whatever the council decides to do, the manner in which a number of individuals and organizations have approached their concerns by spreading slander and rumor, engaging in disparaging people personally, these are the tools and tactics of bullies. Trying to characterize Mayor Romero and Council Member Santa Cruz as Trumpian is ridiculous and speaks volumes about the folks who perpetuate these lies. The vandalizing of the Ward 1 office early this morning is indicative of what happens when bullying, intimidation tactics, and toxic masculinity become part of the public narrative. This is an issue that speaks to the larger concerns our community needs to deal with. While we are a city seeped deep in our stories and our people, we are also a city with a history of intimidation, violence, and struggle for equity, particularly for women, women of color, and other marginalized populations. Redistricting is a reality. Gerrymandering and packing are well-documented problems that undermine our democracy. Mayor and council, thank you for your consideration. I hope you move forward with option A or another solution that moves us towards that equity and representation. Thank you.
Thank you. We're 15 minutes past the half an hour that we've scheduled for call to the audience. I think we went through a good flavor of the input that the community has for us. And so those that were left, which were just a few, can call back again and call our council offices and send emails to all of us that we will pay attention to. So with that, I'm going to close the call to the audience and move to item 7. Thank you all so much for your time and for caring to give mayor and council the input. Item 7.
Consent agenda items A through V.
Reports from the city manager on the consent agenda and received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read the consent agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's consent agenda, item A is approval of minutes. Item B is Industrial Development Authority approving amendments to the joint revolving taxable single-family mortgage program of 2012. Item C has been continued at the request of staff. Item D is a final plat S2005 Sentinel Vistas lots 1 through 11 and common areas A, B, and C. Item E is a final plat, La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 5, lots 1 through 97, in common areas A5, B5, C5, D5, E5, and F5. Item F is a final plat, S20-019, La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 1, lots 1 through 193, in common areas A1, B1, C1, D1, F1, G1, and H1. Item G is a final plat, S20-022, La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 2, lots 1 through 78, in common areas A2, B2, and C2. Item H is a final plat, La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 3, lots 1 through 83, in common areas A3, B3, and C3. Item I is a final plat, S20-027, La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 4, lots 1 through 93, in common areas A4 and B4. Item J is a final plat, S20-014, Espinosa, lots 1 through 6. Item K is a final plat, S18-066, Sawtell, lots 1 and 2. Item L is a final plat, S19-081, Campbell Plaza, lots 1 through 9. Item M is a final plat, S20-026, Bonanza View, lots 1 through 23, in common areas A1, A6, B1, and C1. Item N is real property acquisition of right-of-way for Houghton Road, 22nd Street to Irvington Road Improvement Project. Item O is real property vacation and reconveyance of right-of-way for La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 1, Blocks 47, 48, 50, and 52. Item P is real property vacation and reconveyance of rights-of-way for La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 2, Blocks 48, 49, and 50. Item Q is real property vacation and reconveyance of right-of-way for La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 3, Blocks 45, 46, 47, 48, and 49. Item R is real property vacation and reconveyance of right-of-way for La Estancia de Tucson, Phase 2, Parcel 4, Blocks 45 and 46. Item S is a grant agreement with Pima County for Federal Transit Administration grants AZ-2019-002 and AZ-2020-004 for bus stop improvements. Item T is grant application to the Federal Transit Administration for low or no emission grant program funds. This item has been considered separately at the request of the mayor. Item U is an intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Transportation Authority of Pima County for the Houghton Road, 22nd Street to Irvington Road Improvement Project. Item V is an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System for funding from the Arizona State Opioid Response Grant. That's the extent of the consent agenda, Your Honor. An appropriate motion would be to approve items A through V with the exceptions of items C and T.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
Kozaczek,
Aye.
Mayor Romero.
Aye. Motion passes by a vote of 6-0. Mr. Clerk?
The item to be considered separately was item T, grant applications to the Federal Transit Administration for low or no emission grant program funds.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I pulled this item to consider it separately because I wanted to recognize the work of our Transportation and Mobility Director, Diana Alarcon, and her team for doing everything that they possibly can, being aggressive and intelligent and smart in advancing our climate action goals to electrify our bus fleet. We have applied for and received the FTA low or no emission grants for 2 consecutive years. Thanks to the efforts of Diana Alarcon and her team, we will have 10 electric buses by 2022. We're piloting 1 electric bus right now. 5 additional buses will be on our roads by the spring of 2021. And 4 additional buses after that will be on the road by the spring of 2022. I want to also express my gratitude to TP for supporting this endeavor. TP has committed to finance the purchase and installation of 10 charging stations for our buses. up to $75,000 is spent per station, which means that the final contribution from TEP to the city of Tucson for our goals, our sustainability goals, is about $750,000. We are grateful for TEP's support and hope to continue to partner with them to make Tucson a climate resilient city. That said, I full-heartedly support the acceptance of this grant for the first 5 buses in infrastructure improvements, and I would like to move item T on the consent agenda.
I'll move that for you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 6-0. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to celebrate the work of our departments. We move on to item 8.
Public hearing amending Chapter 23B, the Unified Development Code relating to sign standards. Hearing ordinance number 11803.
City Manager's communication number 411 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing on proposed amendments related to the Unified Development Code sections related to the sign standards. Staff would like to make a brief presentation before we begin the public hearing. This public hearing is scheduled to last for no more than 1 hour. Speakers are limited to 5-minute presentations, but we will celebrate you if you make them shorter. Mr. Clerk, do we have any requests to speak before we start with staff presentation?
We do, Your Honor. Did you want to listen to the staff first or do the public?
Yes,
hearing?
we're going to have the staff present and then go to the speakers.
Okay.
Mr. Clark?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I've got the subject matter expert here tonight, Dan. And again, in Tucson, so I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Bursick at this time. Daniel.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and Council, this item is a public hearing to review and discuss the proposed amendments to the Unified Development Code related to signs in advance of the sign code sunset date, which is August 31st, 2021. Provide a little bit of background on this. So originally back in August 2016, staff was directed to create amendments to address the U.S. Supreme Court case, Reed versus Town of Gilbert, which is related to content neutrality of signs and freedom of speech issues. We went and took 18 months, did a full public process related to this, and came back to you, and we adopted new Reed compliant standards at the end of that process with Mayor and Council and ordinance. At that time, we placed a sunset date on the ordinance of August 31st, 2019. About a year later, or actually in June 2019, we did come back to extend that sunset date to August 31st, 2020, to allow for additional time for public review and some additional time for analysis. At that time, in August 2019, we began the public process to review the sunset date. And to take a look at our code, see if there were any other kind of minor changes that we might need to do. I will say back in July 2020, we did come back to you due to COVID and some of the issues related to holding public hearings. We needed a little bit of extra time. So the current sunset date is August 31st, 2021. So tonight we have really 3 types of amendments in front of you. We have cleanups and clarifications. These are references left over from our Tucson Code Chapter 3 when we transferred it into the UDC Article 7A, and then clarifications on existing policy and that type of thing. The second type are minor changes. They're minor process improvements related to sign review staff input or recommendation by our sign design review committee. So through the process of the review, several items came up that could be improved upon, very minor things, some stuff kind of related to measurement of height of signs. Like instead of radius around a sign 5 feet around, it was the 4 cardinal points, making it easier really for enforcement and for our sign contractors to measure. And then process improvements, and this is important because we are moving to a new permitting system in the city of Tucson called Energov, and there were several minor changes that needed to occur in order for that to work with the new system. So related to the public process, just really quick, the proposal in front of you has gone through a pretty extensive public process. We held 6 meetings with our sign design review committee. They voted unanimously to recommend proposal to sign amendments at their meeting on February 6, 2020. We met with the Tucson-Pima County Historical Plans Review Subcommittee 3 times as well. There were some changes related to historic items. They voted after 3 meetings and some kind of work with them unanimously to recommend approval of the sign standards on August 27, 2020. We held 2 public meetings back in January, on January 28th and 29th. We held a Planning Commission study session on March 4th, 2020. And then we were planning on doing the public hearing. After that, it got pushed back a little bit because of the pandemic. But Planning Commission had a public hearing on the September 16th, 2020. We had 8 people who spoke at that hearing, and the Planning Commission voted 7-3 to forward a favorable recommendation, the sign code sunset date revisions, with 6 additional kind of minor cleanups to you. And that's what you have in front of you right now. So I just wanted to make a little note. What came up during the Planning Commission public hearing was quite a bit of items related to illumination and digital signs. So I just wanted to clarify kind of a couple things related to those. So just to let you know, the Outdoor Lighting Code Committee is presently meeting, and at some point in the future, we'll have some amendments to the Outdoor Lighting Code. And some of those may include amendments related to signs. So they showed up at the meeting and spoke their opinion and let us know that they were going to be doing this. The Outdoor Lighting Code regulates illumination, not the sign code. The sign code regulates signs. So they're 2 separate things, and the sign code is in the Unified Development Code. The only amendments proposed that affect digital signs within this proposal, the small minor amendments, were basically correcting errors in translation from the 2017 revisions. And then the only changes to digital signs made in 2017, back when we did this previously, was to reduce the rate of change from 1 hour to 1 minute. So very minor changes to digital signs. I know that is a concern of a lot of the community, and we just wanted to kind of clarify that. So with that, you know, while the recommendation in front of you in your materials is the removal of sunset date, we have had some discussions in the last day or so with University of Arizona Astronomy Department, Dark Skies community, as well as MPA and other organizations. And we did want to let you know that staff would be supportive of the extension of the sunset date for 5 years. If this was limited to a review of the sign code items that would need to be addressed as a result of those outdoor lighting code amendments. So we are aware that there could be some issues related to those kind of lining up together, and feel that that would allow us to go back, make those changes related to just those outdoor lighting code amendments. So with that, thank you very much for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bursick. I do have a list of those that want to speak. Again, the public hearing is scheduled to last for no more than an hour. Each speaker has 5-minute presentations. If you do hear other speakers say what you wanted to say and you wanted to limit your comments, we also appreciate that. But with that, I'd like to call on Allison Solomon.
Good evening. Thank you, Mrs. Mayor, members of the council, and thank you very much, Dan, for the presentation and for the collaboration. My name is Allison Solomon, and I am the Executive Director of Metropolitan Pima Alliance, and we are an organization that advocates for a more prosperous community by bridging the gap between the public and private sector, representing the land use and development community. We are in support of what staff has proposed, the changes as well as removal of the sunset date. However, we are also understanding of the concerns of the astronomy industry and the importance of the industry to the region. We respect the astronomy community's desires to have the illuminated signs evaluated when updates are made to the outdoor lighting code. Therefore, we would be agreeable to the 5-year sunset date to the sign code, as staff suggested, only if it applied solely to the illuminated signs affected by the outdoor lighting code. And I would like to say that decision, as Dan alluded to, was reached with a lot of conversations, a lot of consensus, and this comes off of the heels of the efforts that were put into the 2017 code, which Mayor and Council did support. And that code was fully vetted by the community, and it has resulted in some good outcomes. There have been less variances, and there have overall been less there have been less errors with the code, less issues in interpretation. The process has been much easier for the community. So all in all, we think that the minor amendments will just further clarify the process. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all and for all of the collaboration that you continue to show my organization, the community.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Mr. Mark Mayer. Mr. Mark Mayer.
He's muted, Your Honor.
Mr. Mayor. Alrighty, let's move on to Richard Green.
Mayor O'Meara and council members, good evening. I'm an astronomer at the
Okay,
University
I
of
just
Arizona.
unmuted. Did any of that come through?
Mark, we're going to start with Mr. Richard Green, but you can go right after Mr. Green.
Very good.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Thank you. So I'm an astronomer at the University of Arizona, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Arizona Astronomy Consortium, which is the association of professional observatories in the state of Arizona. And so we first want to acknowledge the long-term and continuing support of the city in minimizing the impact of outdoor lighting on the professional observatories around this area. It's amazing, but Arizona has 10% of the world's largest telescopes and the world's largest telescope. And so it's an investment worth protecting. And as Dan Bursick described to you, our main concern was that the outdoor lighting code revision may lead to some contradictions in zoning of the sign code allowances because of the illumination zones in the outdoor lighting code and the kind of lights that electronic message displays are. Our concern about them is that they actually send light above horizontal with current technology. And that's the kind of unshielded lighting that has been the target of special protection ever since the first outdoor lighting codes in the 1970s. So their use is very restricted, and should they be reclassified that way, that would resonate back into the sign code. So that was our suggestion, to therefore extend the sunset clause to make sure that whatever the outcomes are, they be made consistent in the two codes, and that having a sunset date forced that reconciliation. And we are sympathetic to staff wanting to put it several years out so that they can focus on other important things in the meanwhile. So that was our concern, that a sunset date be retained and that it be consistent with the wishes of you council members and staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, I think I'm properly unmuted here. Again, my name is Mark Mayer. I'm here on behalf of Scenic Arizona, and I'm not a retained speaker. Here to urge you to establish a new sunset date. I think the 5 years mentioned would seem long to us. We understand staff's desire not to jump back into this, but 3 to 4 years seems more like the time frame we should be talking about. I think what I wanted to express, one of the reasons, others will cover other reasons, but the code process that led to that came out of the Reed Court decision that led to the 2017 ordinance, plus the more recent changes, led to the dissolution of the Citizen Sign Code Committee, which had very substantial neighborhood, environmental, scenic, and community-based design professional participation. and nothing really replaced that. And when the Reed case being the touchstone to all of this, what it basically did is open the door under the guise of Reed and buzzwords such as reformatting and update to do some very serious code weakening across many different sections of the code. And that's continued with the latest revisions that are being put forward today, although not as numerous as the 2017 one. So what I'd like to do is just talk about some of those and run through just a sampling. For example, the 2017 and the current additional changes have basically eliminated past compromises that were made by community-based interests and sign users and or sign industry representatives in a number of areas, such as canopy signs, the O1 zone, scenic routes, and a number of others. I know I was personally involved in 2 of those in terms of brokering some kind of an agreement as to what would be acceptable to the community, but would have some additional sign allowances. Then we move on to electronic signs. I do not consider changing the 60 minutes to 1 minute change interval as minor, as has been put forward. What we've seen is just a wholesale proliferation of electronic signs. When it was changed to 1 minute, that was like a dog whistle that you don't have to comply with any regulations. And so they're flashing, scrolling, not complying with the 1 minute, and proliferating across the town, and also extremely bright. The Master Sign Program has become a vehicle for much larger, much taller signs. One of our members researched it and found that 46 out of 47 applications over the last few years
I don't know if we lost him.
15 to 25%. And if you look at the old Speedway's the ugliest street in America, I don't think you'd see a lot of difference in the impact of that photograph if there'd been a few nice design flourishes on those signs, just the multitude and impact of that many large signs on the community. I'd also note that other jurisdictions have managed to face the Reed issue without having this major weakening of the code. And I would certainly point out jurisdictions like Flagstaff, Peoria in the Phoenix area, Scottsdale, Oro Valley here, and even Sahuarita that did have some significant weakening in a few areas, maintained the integrity of its code overall. So I think what you really get down to is characterizing these things as minor is just, rather than get into splitting hairs over all the details, let's go out on the streets. What is the visual condition of our community since these regulations have been passed? We have electronic signs proliferating, which the public does not support. And we have just a gauntlet of temporary signage that I have to run through every time I go to the supermarket in my neighborhood. And then you can go through the laundry list. So I think basically the interests that have been at the table in the Citizen Sign Code Committee that was dissolved in 2017 have not really had a good mechanism to be engaged in a community-based review of these changes that have weakened the code, and a new sunset date would provide that opportunity. I do think 5 years is too far out. I do think staff I understand their desire not to revisit this too soon, but I think 3 to 4 years is a better time frame to be looking at. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Michael Guyman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Mayor Romero, members of the Tucson City Council, my name is Michael Guyman, Vice President of the Tucson Metro Chamber, and I thank you very much for your time this evening. As a quick aside, I do want to thank the council and staff for suspending the enforcement of the temporary signs. I've heard from many restaurants, small businesses, and members, this has helped drive much needed traffic to their establishments. Regarding the issue before you tonight, you have to love it when processes work. 3 years ago, you adopted a sign code that was the result of collaborative work amongst many stakeholders. 3 years later, that sign code has proven to work very well. The efficacy of that well-working sign code is in the form of significantly reduced complaints and only one variance thanks to the creation of the Master Sign Program. These points were laid out in the letter we jointly sent with the Metropolitan Pima Alliance. Ms. Solomon addressed some of those tonight, in addition to the materials provided by staff and obviously outlined by Mr. Bursick. We are in support of the Planning Commission's recommendation and the proposed changes staff has detailed in the materials, which does include the removal of the sunset date. We know there are concerns about signs from dark skies, which have been outlined tonight, particularly the illumination of signs. The astronomy sector is very important to our community, as are our local businesses, many of whom are struggling at this time. And we are well aware of the desire to have the illuminated signs evaluated when updates are made to the outdoor lighting code. In fact, we're interested in working more closely with Dark Skies on a variety of sign issues in both the city and the county. Based on that desire to continue to work together, we are certainly agreeable to the aforementioned 5-year sunset date to the sign code, only if it's applied solely to the illuminated signs affected by the outdoor lighting code. Again, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for the collaborative spirit of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guyman. Mr. Brent Davis.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and good to see all of you on Zoom this evening. Madam Mayor and members of the council and staff, we appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about the sign code. But first of all, I want to reserve just 15 seconds to say I was on the city council when Albert Elias was hired. And that tells you two things. It tells you that we're very glad it finally worked out for him and he became a productive member of city staff. And secondly, he must be really old and it's probably time to retire. So Albert, best of luck to you and thank you for your service to the city. Regarding the sign code, I have appeared in front of the council many times, and I would just like to say when my good friend Michael Guyman says it's worked out for the business community, not so much for the neighborhoods and the average citizenry. And I'm a member of that business community, and I am not in favor of bigger, taller, brighter signs. And what all these changes in the sign code for since 2017 have brought bigger, taller, and brighter signs. Now, bigger, taller, and brighter signs emit more light into the atmosphere. And that, I don't care how you cut it, that's not good for the astronomy industry, especially these electronic message centers. If I had my way, we should abandon them and not allow any more of them. If you think that they're not affecting anybody, drive by Speedway and Stone, and just in the evening attempt to look at the sign, the electronic message center of the chicken place there. Now, what we are sacrificing is they're going to sell 5 more buckets of chicken, and we're putting a multi-million-dollar, high-paying job generating industry at risk. And I think that's the wrong way to go. But you've made that decision to allow them, and that's fine. So I would plead, agree with Mr. Mayor that we need to get the restrictions back on the copy change to minimum of 5 minutes and probably an hour the way it was originally. That should save a lot of the flashing and the scrolling, which is the source of a lot of this light pollution that affects the astronomy industry. The second thing I would say is I believe that the sunset clause is important, and I'm glad that staff has decided to endorse that. 5 years, okay. Remember, whatever we say 5 years, the sunset review, as Mr. Clark will tell you, starts probably a year out. So that'd be 4 years before we look at the sign. I would think if it were 4, then we would start that process at 3, but I don't want to quibble over that. And then finally, I'll just say this, since this is the sunset time, I sure wish you'd go back and revisit feather banners. I defy any of you to look me in the face on the street or in a meeting and say, Brent, you know, our city is better looking today because we have feather banners all up and down the streets of our city. Ain't true. You know it, I know it, and the citizens know it. And I just think it's the business community kind of running roughshod over a process that has held a very conservative sign code in this city since 1980 when it was first passed. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Good to see you all, and stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Jude Cook.
Hi there. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Jude Cook. I own and operate Cook and Company Sign Makers and the Ignite Sign Art Museum. I've worked with this code for 37 years, and I was on the sign code committee for 10 years, and I actually helped write this code. You know, signs in our community are part of what create the iconicness of some of the things we have in this town. You know, if you think about the Diving Girl and you think about the Tucson Inn, we can't create those anymore, but they are an important part of our community. And though we're not building those kinds of things these days, they do, even the new signs, create part of the fabric of our community. This code just works so much better than the 1980 code. The 1980 code did so much to decimate the historic character of our old signs in this town, and I never want to go back there. What this code has done is it provides flexibility with reasonable requirements. It addressed the Reed versus Gilbert Supreme Court decision, and we no longer are managing our signs by variance. I'm pretty sure the sign department is probably one of the most efficient departments at development services these days, based on my experience with processing permits due to this code. Most of our projects are handled in just a few days. I cannot ask for more than that. Regarding some of the concerns I've heard, lighting is addressed in the outdoor lighting code, and it dictates sign lighting. And when the OLC is updated, it will still control sign illumination. The sign industry, just like the MPA and the chamber, will work with the outdoor lighting committee to create a functional code as they did 8-9 years ago. I will point out that some of the items I've heard come down to an enforcement issue. One is the brightness of EMCs. We have a limit on that, which is significant, and the changing is an issue. And that can be addressed, and I think what it requires is probably a community service effort to try to educate people on the importance of the outdoor lighting code and the dark skies to our community. And I agree with that. You know, I've floated an idea, and I'm not going to spend time here discussing it, but I do want to get together and talk this over with people that have a stake in this. Got another comment or two. In the future, if the code needs to be changed, there is a pathway to make changes when needed. So I want to let you know I support this code as submitted and agree with keeping the sunset clause as they proposed at a 5-year point. I do thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. I do not have any more listed speakers. Is there anyone else interested in speaking on this item? Alrighty, hearing none.
Madam Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
There's a motion.
Second that motion, Your Honor.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 The public hearing is closed. Just want to allow for my colleagues on the council to ask questions or make a statement. And on my end, I've looked at, we've been having this conversation since before 2017. The process has been thorough. The data seems to indicate that the sign code as adopted is working well. The city of Tucson has seen a significant drop in sign related complaints. I believe back in 2015, we had 1,458 complaints. In 2019, we saw 100 complaints. And so that to me indicates that things are working. The process that the city of Tucson has taken to receive input and feedback has been thorough. It highlights the importance of the different stakeholders in the community that have come to us. And I do see that, you know, the Planning Commission voted 7-3 to remove the sunset clause and approve the minor amendments in this report. The sign design review committee held 6 meetings to review proposed updates and provide input, and voted unanimously to recommend proposed sign code amendments. There were 2 additional public meetings that were held in January, as Dan said. The Planning Commission had a public hearing September 16th. People had an opportunity to speak there. They voted 7-3 to forward a favorable recommendation to remove the sunset clause and approve the minor amendments. You know, I believe that work, lots of hard work and dedication by staff and different community stakeholders have had the opportunity to be heard. And I too agree that the sunset is acceptable at 5 years, and that it should be contingent upon the applying to the revisions of outdoor lighting as well, because I believe that outdoor lighting is a much more difficult and important issue that we have to make sure that we're paying close attention to. So with that, I'll open it up for my colleagues on the council. Councilmember Kozaczek, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, I figured that out after.
I thought you were clapping.
No, after 6 hours, I finally figured that thing out. So thank you. First of all, Brent, you turned your camera off, so I can't look in the eye, but I think feather banners are festive. So there you go.
There, you can do it now.
I did. All right. First of all, before I have a couple of comments, not wholly out of the same direction that the mayor was going, but before I make them, I'm reluctant to a limitation on the conditions we place on the sunset. So, Dan, if you could correct me, we had the original code. We put a sunset on it. We extended it from 17 to 19.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Councilmember Kosacic, that is correct. So it's from originally August 31st, 2019. We extended it to 2020, and then currently it's in 2021.
Okay, so we've really, because of COVID, we've really extended it one time in terms of our interest in being able to assess the impact of the code and the changes that we made. Yeah, I'm reluctant to lock in the terms of a code until we're back to a more normal public process, and so that's one of the reasons I think that we have to preserve some level of the sunset clause. COVID has really prevented the astronomy industry from finishing their review, and so I think that based on the comments from actually both sides of this, I think there's agreement on some level of sunset clause. Extending it, excuse me, is also going to give us a chance to see how some of the unsettled Reed litigation plays out. So the question is, how long and do we place conditions on the limitation of the sunset? So Dan, while you're still on, can you, without going through the whole code, because I don't want to be here all night, but what kinds of things are we saying is settled in the code if we say only the outdoor lighting components? In other words, well, no, in other words, that's the question. What are we locking in place?
Honorable Mayor and Council, Councilmember Kosacic. So ultimately, you're not locking anything in place. Mayor and Council can come back, can direct staff to come back and address anything within the code.
Yeah, but well, wait, but eliminating the sunset clause by eliminating the sign owners can claim a vested right in that code at that time. That's the reason that we put sunset clauses on things, so we can come back without having that 207 exposure. So that while that is true that there's a process, there's another side to that coin, and that's the reason we use sunset clauses. So that's the reason I'm asking the questions. What are we locking in?
So Councilmember Kosacik, you're locking in essentially the changes from 2017. So all of the REIT changes. So you know, if we revert back before that, it causes a lot of other legal issues beyond that. But you're locking in, you know, the sign design review committee, the sign design option, all of the kind of process changes that a lot of people were talking about. And then also you'd be locking in, I guess, whatever minor changes that we're bringing in front of you today.
Okay. I'm going to listen to the rest of what my colleagues have to say. I am reluctant to place limitations on it, but I want to hear what everyone else has to say. The only other issue I've got in this is that I hesitate to use the word curfew, but our existing code has a curfew, and after which the signs are supposed to be off, and it varies depending on where the location in the city is. And the times are there to protect the dark skies, the astronomy industry, and we need a well-designed and provided to the businesses educational component to alert them that we need to start enforcing that curfew on the illumination, because it's in the code and we're not changing, we're simply not enforcing it. So some level of upping our game in terms of implementing that piece of the code, education prior to citation. But you know, we've had several of them where the timer on the sign just went out, and so the business just had to go and fix their timer. But that's an issue right now also that I think we need to. It's really sort of not exactly what we're talking about, but it's part and parcel, because if we're gonna move forward with this and leave the outdoor lighting code components still in play, then making sure that we administer that curfew is important. And that's all I've got right now.
Any others on the council? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Your Honor. There's three components here. This is similar to a lot of issues that we have in Tucson, and this one shouldn't be. This one isn't as heavy as usual. First of all, most of the stakeholders in this case have been working in good faith to come to consensus, and we had some very nuanced stuff that puts us out of consensus. I mean, we're talking down to, I think we have pretty much unilateral agreement on the sunset. And I think we have a nuanced decision on whether or not the sunset should apply only to lighting or not. And let me say a couple of things. Number one is, I want to thank the astronomy community. They've all been very reasonable in this process. And they're the ones that I kind of look to because astronomy, the mirror lab, all those things, the optics, all that represents almost about 5 or 6% of our total economy in Tucson. So we're not going to mess with those guys. So anybody who says that we're being too hard on businesses, remember, we're trying to protect a major sector of our economy by having these ordinances. So it's important to point that out. The second piece is, let's have one that makes sense so that businesses on the ground actually have some time to make a decision. If we don't have a sunset, you'll have businesses waiting for the next sign code to come up, or they'll be coming back trying to change it. If we do have a sunset that's far enough out, they can make their decision with some clarity. And so that's kind of, I think, a good piece. I think the last piece, and that's the one, I think the one place where we don't have agreement is whether or not to single out the sunset only applying to the dark skies piece. I'd say that I'd say that it almost doesn't make a difference to me, but I think it's actually cleaner government to do the whole thing. And the reason is because we don't know what technology is going to be like in 5 years. We don't know what technology is going to exist. We don't know how signs are going to change. I mean, maybe they'll have interactive signs, they'll have lasers. I mean, there'll be all kinds of different things. And we just can't predict what signs will do and not do over the next 5 years. Robotic signs, moving signs, all the different things we can do, ones that do VR. I mean, there's all kinds of cool things that are going to happen in this industry. We can't predict that. So to limit the sunset just to one piece, I don't really know if I think that's making it more complicated against simplicity. So unfortunately, the business community's spot on, and then some of this stuff we don't need, but some of it we do. We do need to be able to have a check and a balance so that and when the time comes, we can take a look and see if we have the right sign code for what time of year it is. I think, again, though, if we did it every year, it would be a constant battle. And by setting it out 5 years, I'd even say 6, 7 years would probably be a better spot. So I'm in support of the amendments from staff. I'm in support of a sunset of 5 years. And I'm also in support of making that a unilateral. I'd even give up years to make it more unilateral. But that's kind of where I stand. I want to listen to my colleagues before we make a final vote.
Any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Lee.
Thanks, Mayor. I think the Vice Mayor had a copy of my notes because he touched on a lot of the points that I also wanted to make. I wanted to acknowledge all the work from Planning and Development Services and all of the stakeholders. I know that a tremendous amount of work went into this, getting us where we are today. I really appreciate the input of the business community as a whole, and especially Mr. Green coming here and talking about the scientific community. And I love the intersection of the science and the business community, because in Tucson, we're in the business of science in a lot of ways, which is, as the Vice Mayor said, such an important part of our economy and who we are as a city, and definitely do not want to put that at risk in any way. To the Vice Mayor's point about how rapidly technology is changing in this space, the flip side of that is being able to rapidly adapt and open up capabilities for our businesses to leverage those new technologies that are available. That would make sense for the city. So I actually don't feel comfortable going past like a 5-year mark into a 6 or 7, because we may inhibit our businesses from using those new options that might be available to them. So that's just kind of where my head's at now. I understand, and from a governance perspective, what everyone is saying. I guess my biggest concern is just making sure we're definitely addressing the illumination piece that would potentially impact our scientific and business communities. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Lee. Any others?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, if it's possible, since we've heard from and it's under the same vein that the Vice Mayor is gone, yourself, and also Councilwoman Lee. And it's because we don't know what it's going to foresee in the future. And I want to thank Scott Clark and Dan and all their crews for really putting this together and looking at this. And it's amazing that you mentioned also the number of complaints that have been dropped. But we still have some issues with the curfew enforcement. And that's something we're still working on. I know Scott's working on that. But much has been covered in the sign code, and work has been done to review and modify it. With changes in technology and overseeing economic circumstances, the Mayor and Council needs to continue a review process for the sign code and have a sunset date so that it would remain in effect, an effective tool for our city. So I would move that we pass and adopt ordinance number 11803, but it would also like to add an amendment to include a review process and sunset clause for 5 years, effective August 31, 2026. That's my motion, Madam Mayor.
Without condition on on what can be considered during that sunset.
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just say that, that I appreciate again, as both Nikki and Paul have said, I appreciate the work everyone's put into this, and while the numbers are demonstrably down, nothing's been normal for the last year, and the opportunity for public review of this hasn't been normal, and so it is arguably the most important. The astronomy piece of this is arguably the most important, and yet that we shouldn't diminish the rest of them by saying they're not a part of the conversation anymore until, as I say, we get back to a more normal public process. That's the reason I support Richard's motion.
So Councilmember Fimbres, one of the points that MPA and others have made is that that this would be applying to revisions to the outdoor lighting code. Is that something that you also want to add to this, or you do not want to add?
Yes, that's one of the main issues right now, concerns with the community is the outdoor lighting.
Your Honor, I'll make that as a friendly amendment.
I'll accept it.
Okay.
Well, wait. When I asked if your motion was without condition on what could be considered during the sunset, you said yes, without condition. Now you're placing that condition on it that the only thing that be considered is the outdoor lighting?
No, that's not how I'm phrasing it. I'm saying that the outdoor, the entire ordinance has to abide by the outdoor lighting code if it changes. Mm-hmm. If the outdoor lighting code changes or applies to if the outdoor lighting code is amended and those amendments are not congruent to our signing code needs to adapt to that. That's the purpose of my amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what I'm suggesting is that there may be other components to the code that don't have anything to do with the outdoor lighting code that I'm saying we ought to also leave on the table. We're not restricting anybody's ability during that time. All we're saying is that we're not locking the code in and put ourselves in a 207 exposure.
I'd say that for sure, but what I'm saying is that the changes to the lighting code would be automatic, whereas changes to the code in general would be a situation where a council member would bring it back on the agenda. If there was a that's the difference that I'm going with. I want the adaptation to the lighting code to be automatic. I want it to be triggered automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't mind that. So Mike Rankin, you just pop your camera on. Could you clarify then, whatever we lock into the code tonight, not subject to the sunset clause, could you explain the vested rights that gives to owners?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Kozaczek. First of all, as I understand the motion offered by Councilmember Fimbres, is to adopt the ordinance as presented with a sunset clause that applies to all of its provisions, not just those that are related to illumination.
Okay.
What I take the amendment to be is to add to that in the event that outdoor lighting code changes are made to the outdoor lighting code that necessitate any future modifications to these provisions, that those provisions will come back to you to make them consistent with the changes in the outdoor lighting code. In other words, to marry up those codes to protect the limitations that would be imposed by the outdoor lighting code.
That's totally fair, but I thought that would have been incorporated in Richard's original motion anyway. But that's fine if we need that clarification.
That's how I understand the amendment as well.
Okay.
Okay.
So is the motion, the seconder, acceptable with a friendly amendment? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a motion and a second and the friendly amendment. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Clerk, do we go to roll call?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, roll call.
I'm going to read the ordinance by number and title only.
Yes, sir. Please do.
Ordinance number 11803 relating to planning and zoning, amending the Tucson Code, Chapter 23B, United Unified Development Code, sections 2.2, 3.5, 5.3, 5.5, 5.8, 11.4, and Article 7A, and setting an effective date. And then this ordinance will be amended to extend the sunset date and the additional amendment related to the outdoor lighting code. Mr. Cunningham.
I vote yes to this motion.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mayor Romero.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres.
Aye.
Motion ordinance number 11803 passes by a vote of 6-0. Thank you all. Item 9.
Public hearing amending Chapter 26 Floodplain, Stormwater, and Erosion Hazard Area Regulations relating to adoption of the new City of Tucson Levy Manual and City of Tucson Floodplain Management Plan. Hearing ordinance number 11801 and resolution number 23280.
City Manager's communication number 408 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing on proposed amendments to Tucson Code Chapter 26 and adoption of an updated Tucson Floodplain Management Plan and adoption of a levy manual. This public hearing is scheduled to last for no more than an hour. Speakers are limited to 5-minute presentations. Mr. Clerk, do we have any requests to speak for item 9?
No, Your Honor.
Hearing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. The public hearing is closed. Let's see, Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read ordinance 11801 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11801 relating to floodplains, amending the Tucson Code, Chapter 26, Floodplain, Stormwater, and Erosion Hazard Management, Article 1 in General Division 1, Floodplain and Erosion Hazard Area Regulations, Section 26-2 Definitions, Section 26-5.2 Floodway Fringe Development, Section 26-7.1 Setbacks on Regional Watercourses, Section 26-8 Subdivision and Development Project Requirements, and Table 1, Section 26-10 Detention Retention Systems, Section 26-12 Appeals and Variances, Section 26-13 Amendments, Article 2 Stormwater Management, Division 3 Prohibitions, Non-Prohibited Discharges and Requirements, Section 26-42 Requirements, and setting an effective date.
What is the council's pleasure?
Mayor, I motion to pass and adopt ordinance 11801 and to pass and adopt resolution 23280.
Second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Let's see, Mr. Clerk, I believe we need a roll call.
Yes, Your Honor. Since these two are put into the same motion, I will read resolution number 23280 by number and title. Relating to floodplain management, updating the 1990 version of the Tucson Stormwater Management Study by adopting the 2020 Tucson Floodplain Management Plan Phase 5 and a new 2020 Tucson Levy Manual and setting an effective date. Mrs. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres.
Aye.
Mayor Romero.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. So resolution 23280 passes by a vote of 6-0, and ordinance 11801 passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 10.
Zoning SE 2009 T-Mobile 460 East Drexel Road, R2 Zone, Wireless Communication Facility, Special Exception Land Use, Ordinance Adoption, Report from Zoning Examiner, Ordinance number 11802.
City Manager's communication number 405 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. The special exception site is located near the southwest corner of Drexel Road and Nogales Highway, approximately 120 feet south of Drexel Road and 120 feet east of Nogales Highway, just west of the Union Pacific Railroad tracks in the R2 zone. The zoning examiner and staff recommend approval of the special exception request subject to the recommended conditions. Is the applicant present?
Honorable Mayor, this is Reg Destry. I'm representing SBA Communications, and I am the applicant. Just trying to save time, I don't have a formal presentation, but I can certainly answer any questions that anyone may have. This is the same general proposal that you and the council approved last year. We just had to move south of Drexel Road because of some ownership issues with the railroad.
Mr. Destry, are you agreeable to the proposed requirements and conditions?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read ordinance 11802 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11802 relating to zoning, a special exception land use wireless communication facility, SE 2009 T-Mobile Drexel Road, located approximately 120 feet south of Drexel Road and 120 feet east of Nogales Highway, approving with conditions the construction of a wireless communication tower monopole with 9 antenna panels, 80 feet in overall height, including top-mounted lightning rod, approximately 2,450 square foot lease area in the northwestern portion of a 23.71 acre parcel that extends approximately 1 mile from Drexel Road on the north to Valencia Road on the south in the R2 zone, and setting an effective date.
What is the council's pleasure?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the request for special exception as recommended by zoning examiner and pass and adopt ordinance 11802.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Fimbres?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mayor Romero?
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek?
Aye.
Mrs. Lee?
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Ordinance number 11802 passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 11.
Finance, authorizing the amendment of sale of certificates of participation, Series 2020, Resolution number 23283.
City Manager's communication number 433 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read Resolution 23283 by number and title only.
Resolution number 23283 relating to real and personal property, authorizing the execution and delivery of amendments to lease purchase agreements, a depository trust agreement, and a continuing disclosure undertaking, acknowledging and approving the execution of a certificate purchase agreement or similar agreement providing for the sale and purchase of the 2020 certificates and amendments and supplements to a declaration of irrevocable trust, and the sale and delivery of one or more series of certificates of participation and refunding certificates of participation in the lease purchase agreements pursuant thereto, and declaring an emergency.
What is the council's pleasure?
I move the item as presented.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Kozaczek?
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Romero?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mrs. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres?
Aye.
Resolution number 23283 passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 12.
2020 Ward Redistricting, Tucson Code, amending Tucson Code Section 1-9 to redistrict the city wards. Option A, ordinance number 11809. Option B, ordinance number 11810.
City Manager's communication, let's see, yeah. City Manager's communication number 425 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. So just wanted to open up this item by saying that It's very clear that COVID-19 has presented several challenges for how we conduct city business, especially when it comes to community engagement. I want to make sure that I put out there that I believe that when we are redistricting and making very important decisions for our residents, especially in issues that are important to Tucsonans, we have to make a huge effort to make sure that people know that we're having an important conversation, whether it's redistricting or housing or development issues, and that this particular process did not have a thorough conversation and opportunity for the community to engage. I know that the commission, which I want to thank our commissioners for their time and effort and time spent in looking at population and representation and other issues, that they've spent a lot of their time. They are not compensated for their time. And so it's very important to thank them and thank them for bringing us a thoughtful approach into this. I do not blame the commissioners for not having that community engagement piece. I want to make sure that in the future, we have the opportunity to engage our community much more, even though the code doesn't say that we should, or the charter doesn't call for it. I believe that we have to have a plan through the clerk's office to inform the residents of our city of the changes that could affect them. When both option A and option B were brought to the mayor and council, I was surprised that a motion was made. I know that all of us want to have an opportunity to discuss with our neighborhoods if they are being affected. And, you know, I paused at several different points in the conversation to just make sure that we all felt comfortable. Now, saying that, I also talked about at that point in time when we were discussing the options that we had in front of us, why I supported option A for us to move forward with. As I said before, the city of Tucson has a population demographic, according to the American Community Survey of 2018, of the Latino community in Tucson is 45.79% of the population. The African American community here in Tucson is 6.86% of the population. Native American or Alaska Native is 3.58, and Asian is 3. Our white community is 41.72%. What we've seen take place in our deliberations as we look at redistricting is that we are looking at increasingly higher concentrations of Latino, Hispanic Tucsonans in wards 1 and 5. And throughout the decades and the time that we've redistricted, we have seen those numbers grow higher and higher and higher. And the demographics of our city are changing, and the Latino population in the entire city have grown. Like I said, we are almost 50% of the population. And while it is very important to have majority minority wards, we need to balance that against the perception of packing, which is against the law. The practice of concentrating a given demographic or voting block in as few wards or districts as possible is something that we have to confront. The practice of packing has the effect of diluting the electoral strength of the demographic and voting block in question. And to address this concern, the Supreme Court of the United States has established the principle of rough proportionality. That is the opportunity to exercise electoral control in a number of districts that roughly correspond to the voting bloc share of a relevant population. And although Hispanics, Latinos represent 46% of our population, only 2 of 6 wards of our city are Hispanic majority on the council. With that, I think it's important to also talk about how we move forward. We have very well-defined direction by both our Tucson City Code and our city charter that every 4 years we have to look at population deviation and act on redistricting. And that's according to our charter. You know, we have to make sure that as we look at opportunities for redistricting in the future, that we not only look at the population deviation, but that we also look at and have a way of having a metric attached to the fair representation question. The population deviation has a metric. And I believe that we have to have a metric attached to fair representation of the city of Tucson. I am comfortable with moving forward with option B because we do not have enough time to conduct the level of community engagement necessary in order to come up with another option, right? We have in front of us, we have option A and option B, and we have, according to our charter, until the end of the year to come up with a conclusion. Option B moves less people, and we will also have new census data in 2 years. So even though I believe that community engagement did not happen throughout the city of Tucson, it didn't happen in wards 3 or 1 as much as we feel it was necessary. It also didn't happen for precinct 98, which is part of option B, right? So it's still not fair for the residents of Ward 5 that live in Naylor and Alvernon Heights and Roberts neighborhoods who haven't engaged in the process, but we still have an option A or option B. The unfortunate reality is that because we are exceeding the maximum population deviation of 10%, we need to act now and we need to act before the end of the year. Again, like I said, we have to continue to have ongoing conversation about how we ensure that our ward boundaries are drawn equitably. We cannot continue packing 2 wards in the city of Tucson when the demographics of the city of Tucson have almost 50% of the population in our city being Hispanic or Latino. We must talk openly about packing and address these issues in a fair manner. I'd like to thank the leadership of Councilmember Santa Cruz in bringing the equity conversation to the redistricting process and challenging each of us about how we incorporate equity into broader conversations of city government. We need to make sure that redistricting recommendations give proper weight to maintaining ethnic balance, in addition to total population deviation as prescribed, like I said before, by the city code and Tucson charter. I just want to open it up for my colleagues on the council. I wanted to open up the item and make sure that we talked about some of the issues that brought us to the conclusion of unanimously approving option A back in November when these options were brought to the table. To open it up for my colleagues. Councilwoman Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start us out. Admitted all the way on the east side. Ward 4 had no changes in option A or B. We were just observing and engaging along with each of you. So I wanted to thank everyone on the redistricting advisory team. I have no question about their intentions. I know they were really trying to just do a job and give us the best recommendations that they could. So I really appreciate their time and engagement on that. Also, I know all of our offices received a lot of feedback on this issue, so I really appreciate everyone's advocacy. Obviously, this is an important issue to the community, so I wanted to acknowledge everyone who wrote in, called in, and really were advocating for their neighborhoods and making sure their voice was heard on this issue. I also was very in support of option A in the beginning because of the representation and equity factor. It's very important for me and all of us. We all voted unanimously on option A for that reason. So I just wanted to reinforce that that's something that's very important to me. And I hope that we can make sure in the future that we're considering those metrics, as you mentioned, Mayor, in 2022, and we have new data. I think that's absolutely critical that we have a council that represents our community. That was all I had.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any others?
Mayor, I'll share a couple of things. Just to throw my 2 cents on. I made the original motion, and I'll tell you why. When I made the motion for option A, my interest was in, let me phrase it this way. Ward 6 is the only ward in the city that's landlocked. Every other ward in the city touches the boundary of the county at some point. And option A gives Ward 6 a touch on the northern boundary so that it would have the opportunity to grow through annexation. So the demographics were approximately equal between A and B, but when I heard the support for A based on the metrics that slightly weight and balance of A, I said, yeah, sure, fine, why not? It gives the Midtown ward an opportunity to grow through annexation. We don't have to wait 10 years to do it through redistricting, and so that's why I supported it. What we didn't hear, the entire analysis and conversation was on the demographics. It was on the data. We never heard that we were moving a sensitive landmark from Ward 1 to Ward 3. As I said during the sign code discussion, COVID has affected all of our processes. And to that extent, we need better outreach when this comes back to us again. And it'll come back to us again in a couple of years once we get the census data. And as the mayor pointed out, some sort of a metric for measuring dilution, so that conversation can be more fully engaged. But what we don't need right now is to unnecessarily cause a fight, especially when we're going to revisit this in 2 years, when we will then have full Ward 3 representation at the table. We haven't had that for a while, and I'm glad to announce that Councilmember Durham sent us a note earlier today saying he's going to be back in the saddle tomorrow. So that'll be good. Option B is simple. It moves 1 precinct from 5 to 6. Achieves the balance that we need to have to make us legal, and as I say, we'll have the conversation again in a couple of years. But I don't believe that we need to unnecessarily cause that fight. And next time we'll have a more robust conversation about what cultural assets are being affected by these precincts as well. We didn't have that this time, and so in fact, I'll just move option B right now. Roger, is that 11810?
Yes.
Make sure I get there. Okay, so I'd move that we adopt option B, 11810, with the conditions that the mayor indicated originally, and that is that we have a more robust discussion of dilution going forward. And we all know we're going to have better outreach because hopefully we're not going to be in the middle of COVID in 2 years. If we are, then we got other issues that we got to deal with.
I'll second his motion, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank the committee that put this together. But again, COVID hampered the community participation, and that was a challenge. But the demographics are there. and we have to show it. But again, this is the simplest solution, going to option B, where it only affects wards 5 and 6. And we can also then look at, in 2 years, getting the census data and really have a citizen participation and review and make sure that the right decisions are made for this issue. But again, it's also about the historical sites. I got a lot of seniors that called me over the weekend about El Pueblo, and they say that's the heart of Ward 5. So they were concerned about the precinct being moved over there too. So there's a lot of negatives that we could turn into positives in 2 years. That's
So there's a motion and a second. Thank you, Councilmember Fimbres and Councilmember Kozachik. Any further discussion? Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and for the comments of my colleagues on the council. I had a question for the city attorney because some of the concerns that folks had is like, why was this happening now? Why couldn't we wait until the census data was out before we made any move? Because whether it was Ward 1 or Ward 5 or Ward 6 or Ward 3, there hadn't been enough community engagement. Again, as mentioned before, it's not always, like the charter, the code doesn't, make us do it, but we know that this is an important piece and that we need to be as transparent as possible. But City Attorney, if you could share with the public why this needs to happen at this moment.
Certainly, Council Member Santa Cruz and Mayor, members of the council. So the reason this is in front of you now is not the product of our election cycle, but it is in fact the product of our charter and our code. The charter provides that the redistricting process and the potential for a redistricting occurs every 4 years, and in addition to that, 2 years after the year of the census. So it's not an either or. It's every 4 years plus the 2 years after the census. So this is a redistricting year, and what the charter and the code require is that in each of those years that the mayor and council shall, is the word used in the charter, shall convene the redistricting advisory committee, which of course you did. And if there's a determination that the population disparity is greater than 10%, then we need to move forward with a redistricting. And the charter actually sets the timeline for doing that and dictates that the council act between October and December 31st. So here we are towards the end of December. This is the last meeting scheduled of the mayor and council regular meeting prior to the expiration of the calendar year. And as we know from the write-up, the MPD is in fact above 10%, which is that cutoff level for when the ward disparity is deemed either to be presumed to be okay or presumed not to be okay. And since we're above that number, we have to make some kind of change to address it. And that's the reason that these two proposals came forward, is to satisfy those legal requirements.
Thank you, City Attorney. I thought it was important to clarify, that for the public, since that was a question that was being asked of us, because I had, similar questions. I want to thank my appointee to the Redistricting Committee, Michael O'Connell, who's an organizer with VOUCHER, the organization here in Arizona that's been doing a lot of work around voter registration, voter mobilization, paying living wages, doing criminal justice work, and building Latinx power in the state of Arizona, as seen through the shift across, across the state, and helping, shift the balance here in our political representation. So I want to thank Michael, a Ward 1 resident, also a veteran, for taking the time and offering to support. So I understand, and we've been having these conversations. They're challenging conversations for us to have. And that I know that going forward, any potential change is going to provoke questions. It's going to provoke, conspiracy theories. And some may think that some of the considerations that we're looking at are too drastic. I also think we know the cost of the status quo, as outlined by Mayor Romero earlier. I believe that increasing, political power for communities of color is worth this. It's worth the change. These changes help create the conditions for more leadership from our community at City Hall. I believe that the West Side needs representation that helps shift power in favor of budgets and policy that favor West Side residents. We have the freeway. The freeway is part of our history, our legacy of environmental racism in communities of color that plowed through Mexican-American neighborhoods and destroyed homes a lot like the TCC did, and really just alienated us from the rest of the city. It continues to be a barrier for better planning, for more investments on this side. And so like a observation that I've had from watching my colleagues on the east side with Councilwoman Lee and Vice Mayor Cunningham is the way that they work together to bring investment in infrastructure development into the geography of the east side. And I've just appreciated seeing that and just really feeling, I guess for me, isolated over here on the west side of the freeway. I know that we've been told to wait our turn. I don't think we can wait any longer. That if our goal is justice, we need to do as Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley said, we have to be precise with the fixes as they were precise with the harm. And that is a lot of what our communities have been recovering from and trying to build a brighter future. I believe that if we're to preserve our people and our cultural legacy, our historic parks and icons of when community came together to fight. And as we're fighting against gentrification, it's important that we have representation that is committed to addressing the systemic racism embedded in our marginalization, and call it out, but also have a vision and an outlook for how we're going to create an alternate reality. And that comes not just from throwing rocks. It comes from getting your hands working, getting your hands dirty, doing the work in our community, knocking on doors, talking to folks to make those changes happen. So I just want to state again that I ran, for city council to make advancements for our people and not just accept things the way they are or have some 1970s, romantic notion of what happened then. We continue to be here. We're in similar conditions and we need to fight for more. I'm here to build bridges between the communities that have been segregated by the freeway and City Hall. I also, for the record, want, again, to let folks know that my parents met at the El Rio Neighborhood Center. I wouldn't be here had that space not been there. And that space is there regardless of ward boundaries, and it will continue to be a legacy. I was also born in Barrio Sobaco. About how I've grown up on the west side, on the south side. I'm a mother of 4 kids, raising my kids here every day, doing my part to help improve and bring improvements into our community. And I believe that nothing, when it comes to redistricting, that the city is having a conversation about can change that, can change our community, because the government doesn't define the boundaries of our communities and the legacy and the resiliency. We do that. But yet our communities also have material needs that must be met with more representation and not less. So I know the mayor already outlined all the ways that the city charter isn't specific with giving metrics when it comes to not diluting the Hispanic vote or packing districts. So I would like to add a friendly amendment to Councilmember Kozachik's motion. So in order to provide a metric to help evaluate fair representation and voter dilution, I would like to offer a friendly amendment that in addition to the considerations outlined by the city charter, which is looking at the total population, that districts must be contiguous and compact, et cetera, I move that the city attorney come back to mayor and council within 6 months, if that's helpful, with the proposal to amend the city code regulating redistricting to include a metric of how we can measure voter dilution and ethnic balance by incorporating the concept of rough proportionality. And second, that all future redistricting processes have a comprehensive outreach plan coordinated through the city clerk's office in consultation with relevant ward offices to engage constituents that stand to be affected by redistricting proposals.
That's fine.
So motion maker accepts the friendly amendment and the seconder?
I do too.
Okay, so there is a motion with an additional friendly amendment. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Let me see. Mr. Clerk, is this ordinance, which is the number? Can you repeat the ordinance so that I can?
The ordinance number is 11810, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's go to roll call.
Mr. Kozaczek?
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Romero?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham? Mrs. Lee?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you all so much for your hard work on this. And I want to thank the Redistricting Commission and the City of Clerk staff for all of their work. Item 13.
Mayor and Council, selection of the Vice Mayor, resolution number 23281.
City Manager's communication number 406 dated December 8th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read resolution 23281 by number and title only.
Resolution number 23281, relating to the Vice Mayor of the Mayor and Council in compliance with Tucson Charter, Chapter 9, Section 2, selecting a Vice Mayor to serve a one-year term that will begin on December 8th, 2020 and expire on December 7th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I just wanted to open this item to talk about the process that we have most recently, back in September 9 of this year, previously discussed in terms of the Vice Mayor process. The charter states that the term of the Vice Mayor is 1 year. The city attorney advises that practice that Mayor and Council has followed for the past 15 years is legal and is accomplished by the sequential resignation of the appointed Vice Mayor after she or he has served for a total of 8 consecutive months. That said, the city attorney recommends that Mayor and Council stop that practice and instead appoint a Vice Mayor in December of each year for a term of 1 year for each appointment, which is what the charter says. Mayor and Council motioned and unanimously passed to have the Vice Mayor serve for 1 year. With that said, I'm asking the Council that we continue that practice, but I also want to ask the Council for their input and consideration in terms of the Vice Mayor appointment. Councilwoman Lee.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll start us off. And as I know, we've kind of kicked the can a little bit on this year because it's been, well, I don't know. This is my first year and it's been unprecedented. So I don't know what normal looks like anyway. But I think Vice Mayor Cunningham has been doing a fantastic job. And with Councilmember Durham out, I feel like extending Mr. Cunningham as Vice Mayor through February 9th would give us some time to possibly have a more robust discussion when Councilmember Durham is back and maybe revisit. So we have that continuity through the holiday season and give staff and everyone some time to come up with a new schedule or however that needs to go. So that's kind of my initial thought. And I'm just going to throw it out there via a motion to continue Vice Mayor Cunningham through February 9th and bring it back on that agenda.
Second her motion, Madam Mayor. That gives us more time to review this, and as Councilman Durham will be back starting tomorrow, so that gives us more time to work on this, and we can have further discussion maybe at the retreat. This is a suggestion.
Mr. Rankin, Is that something that we, can do and
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Lee. Yeah, I think actually you could accomplish it two different ways. You could just continue the consideration of the resolution to appoint the next vice mayor to the February date that Councilwoman Lee just indicated. And I would establish here on the record that the net effect of that would be that the existing Vice Mayor Cunningham would hold over, if you will, continue to serve as the vice mayor until a new vice mayor is named to serve the balance of the term. And that way the term will stay with that December to December term, which is what is contemplated by the charter. The other way to do it would be to go ahead and adopt the resolution, appoint Vice Mayor Cunningham to serve. Again, it would be for a one-year term. And then when you come back to consider it in February, he could, if he's not the one appointed at that time, he could just resign at that time. But I would just suggest that if the intention is to have the current vice mayor just hold over until February, then we continue the item to February and just make it clear on the record that it's your intention as the mayor and council that the current vice mayor would continue to serve until that date.
And I agree with that. I think that it'd be best if we just continue the service of Vice Mayor Cunningham. I think he's done a fabulous job. Your concern, Councilmember Lee, is the absence of Councilmember Durham.
Not particularly, Mayor, a concern, but more of having him as part of the conversation, part of the decision. And with the holiday season coming up, giving us time to kind of figure all this out before and the retreat, I thought that maybe January would be too soon. So maybe February 9th was kind of the logic, but I'm open.
Alrighty. I think that it's an acceptable motion, and I don't want to be stuck on a certain date. But I think that it's important that we have that conversation with Councilmember Durham at the table as well. I know that he did call and say that he was not ready to serve as our council member. He was the next person in line to serve as our council member. I just wanted to make sure that we had his voice as well. So I would be fine with having Vice Mayor Cunningham continue his service, and then we could discuss when Councilmember Durham is back how to proceed.
I agree with you, Madam Mayor. I think Vice Mayor Cunningham has done an outstanding job with you and supporting you and working with us and going through these real hard times right now with the COVID pandemic issues and the crises we're seeing and the challenges we have as a city. And I thank for his work and yourself for your work and your leadership. But I think right now, I think sometime in February, we should look at it when Councilman Durham is here, so we have a whole team of folks dealing with this issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree. Any additional commentary or discussion?
For clarification, Nikki, what's your motion?
It would be what Mr. Rankin said, to essentially move, can you say that one more time, the date, the essence of what I'm asking for, Mike, to keep him on until that date and then we revisit this item?
Right. So as I understand it, the effect of the motion would be that you're continuing the consideration of the resolution to appoint the vice mayor until February, and with the net effect of that being that the existing Vice Mayor Cunningham, will continue to serve in that capacity until the council makes the appointment.
We have a meeting on February 9th. Is that the date you're choosing, Nikki?
That was the recommendation, yes.
I would much rather not appoint a date on it, but leave it for February meeting.
Well,
February meeting, I can do that.
Alrighty, any further discussion? Steve, You look perplexed.
Why wouldn't we choose a date? I don't know. I just, the whole thing is just
No,
silly
only
because
because
it's a rotation. It's a rotation. It's Paul's turn, Durham's turn, and I don't know, the whole thing is kind of silly, but go ahead and make your motion, or let's just do it. I don't care.
Okay, so any further discussion? Alrighty, so there's a motion and a second. I think it's a roll call. A roll call vote. Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Sure. The hell.
Ms. Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
Mayor Romero,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
I don't know about this one. Aye.
Alrighty, resolution 23281. Or actually, we're not approving the resolution. We're just continuing, right, Mr. Clerk? Please correct the
That's right, Your Honor.
action. So motion passes by a vote of 6-0. I think that's the correct call out. Okay. Item 14,
Adjournment.
council will stand adjourned. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, January 5th at 5:30 p.m. Thank you all so much for your hard work, and we will see you soon.
Have a Merry Christmas, Madam Mayor, and be
We
safe.
still have, not yet, not yet, Mr. Councilmember Fimbres. We still have one gathering for budget retreat, and then we can tell each other Merry Christmas.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next.
Good night, rest.